now. Yes, I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Jap?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Crazy, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cat Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, controversy and corruption, part 3, the finale. How's the family today? Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Hope everyone is having a great Thanksgiving so far. We're going to finish up Corruption Week, really, because Tuesday, Wednesday, we had the trilogy Monday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, been all about corruption. We're going to finish it up today. We're going to look at the sanctioning bodies, finally, and the role they play in the corruption of the sport. We're going to take a look at the Louis Resto versus Billy Collins Jr. situation. Louis Resto cheated, the worst cheater in boxing history. Cheated so bad, him and his trainer, Panama Lewis, ended up in prison. Okay? And then we're going to look at why did Muhammad Ali have so much trouble with Ken Norton. We're going to break that down today. And then what happened to the fan man? We're going to take a deep dive into what happened to Fan Man after the incident when he interrupted the Bo Holyfield fight. And then we're going to look at which of the two fighters benefited the most from the Fan Man interruption. Okay? And then finally, we're going to look at Mafia in boxing and their corruption, but specifically the situation with Jake LaMotta. All of that today on Cast Sports, the Box Story, bringing you all of that boxing history. Okay? How's everyone today? Thanksgiving edition of Cast Sports, the Box Story. Okay? Here we decided to have an episode today. If the regulars don't show up, they will watch it on the playback. It's going to be a good show. Tomorrow is going to be profile day. We're going to look at some cruiserweights. They kind of flew under the radar. Some cruiserweights that never won titles, wasn't household names. About six to eight of them tomorrow on profile day. Okay? But now, to get things started, as we normally do, we're going to have our fight of the day. Okay? So without further ado, let's take a look at today's fight of the day. Okay, the fight of the day today is Alex Arthur versus Michael Gomez. October 25th, 2003. An amazing Scotland versus England slugfest. Okay, Alex Arthur versus Michael Gomez. An amazing Scotland versus England slugfest. Salute Mike Rim. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you and your family are enjoying the day. Okay? Appreciate you letting me be a part of it. This is the final show on the controversy and corruption. We'll cover a number of things, including the sanctioning bodies today. But first, the fight of the day. Arthur versus Gomez. This is a England versus Scotland slugfest. Amazing England versus Scotland slugfest. But salute Mike Rim. All right. So, October 25th, 2003. A little over 20 years ago. Okay? In the year of our Lord, 1298, the Battle of Falkirk took place, a major conflict in the First War of Scotland independence. On the outskirts of Edinburgh, the forces of King Edward of England clashed with those of Sir William Wallace of Scotland. In a single day, over 4,000 men lost their lives. And when the dust finally cleared from the chaotic scene, King Edward had secured victory for England. The Scottish forces had fought gallantly, but were simply outnumbered. Neither country would ever be the same, and centuries of intermittent struggle would follow. It may sound far-fetched, but the echoes of that historic clash were felt more than 7 centuries later, when two modern-day warriors did battle. This time, with a Latino twist, under Marquis of Queensberry rules, and with the super featherweight Lonsdale belt on the line. Make no mistake, for more than a few that night, Arthur versus Gomez was Scotland versus England, and all the historic burdens of the past were on full display in a night many UK fight fans will never forget. There's a shot of Alex Arthur right there. Amazing Alex Arthur, what they called him. Scotland's protagonist on this day was their native son, Amazing Alex Arthur, the media darling who, like Wallace, was a young yet savvy fighter. Wallace was the leader of the Scottish army that day back in the 12th century, okay? And like Wallace, Arthur was a young yet savvy fighter, having honed his skills training with the assumptive best of the day. The 25-year-old babyface pugilist was a highly regarded prospect. His record, 16-0 with 15 knockouts coming into this fight. 16-0 with 15 knockouts. The English antagonist of this hugely anticipated Battle of Britain was the man they called the Predator, Michael Armstrong Gomez. Upon entering boxing, Armstrong, who was in fact born in Ireland, changed his last name to honor his favorite fighter growing up, the little giant from Puerto Rico, Wilfredo Gomez. He then later settled in Manchester, and England adopted him as one of their own. Hence, one of his alternative monikers, the Manchester Mexican. The Manchester Mexican. Okay? The 26-year-old former Lonsdale champion, with a record of 28 wins, 5 losses, looked to turn back the clock and use his tactical experience to overwhelm the still wet behind the ears Arthur. Like King Edward, Gomez had played well the part of the antagonist, culminating in his Latino-themed invasion of Edinburgh. And like the Scots back on July 22nd, 1298, young Arthur had no idea what lay in store for him, okay? And there's the Manchester Mexican, Michael Gomez, right there, what they call him, the Manchester Mexican. He actually, his last name was Armstrong, born in Ireland, but growing up, Wilfredo Gomez was his hero, and he actually changed his last name to Gomez. Hence, the Manchester Mexican, Michael Gomez. In the heart of Edinburgh lies Meadowlands Sports Stadium. It became a battlefield of modern times on that memorable night. The stands were filled to capacity with rabid Arthur supporters, singing in unison old war songs as they awaited the Malay to start. Sky Sports was in attendance, broadcasting live to the whole of the UK. And former world lightweight champion Ken Buchanan could not be missed ringside, looking as dapper as ever, the man who stands second only to Benny Lynch in the pantheon of the greatest Scottish boxers, could hardly be heard over the frenzied crowd in his pre-fight interview. Wish I was 15 years younger, he remarked wryly, the glory days of his battles with Ismael Laguna, Carlos Ortiz, and the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran, no doubt fresh in his mind. Having visited Scotland's favorite in his dressing room minutes before, the former champion predicted an Arthur win inside of 7 rounds. An Irishman and fellow former champion Barry McGuigan shared a similar prediction in his pre-fight commentary. Gomez may put him on the seat of his pants, said Barry, but I expect Arthur to get up and take him apart to earn a late round stoppage. And there's Ken Buchanan, former fighter, fought Ismael Laguna, the great Carlos Ortiz, and the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Former champ Buchanan picked Arthur to get the win by stoppage, late round stoppage. The jarring strains of mariachi music signal the interest of Gomez, the journeyman, the outsider, making his way through the throng wearing his traditional sombrero and flanked by trainer Billy Graham and fellow Manchester native Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton walked into the ring. To add fuel to the fire, Hatton had also donned a sombrero as the thousands in attendance booed and shouted profanities. And we note the historical parallel, as King Edward had also entered the fray at Falkirk with two generals at his side, assuring the tactical advantages for England, while many of William Wallace's most trusted advisors had stayed home. If the crowd was already at fever pitch, it was sent into an absolute frenzy when his hero, Alex Arthur, made his way to the ring in shiny gold and white attire, the Scotsman dancing and smiling and soaking up the cheers of his compatriots. But an ominous moment came when Arthur and company climbed the steps to the ring and locked eyes with the waiting Gomez at the top of the stairs. The moment reminiscent of the blistering words uttered by King Edward in Falkirk. As God lives, they need not pursue me, for I will meet them on this day. Al Booger in the building. What's up, Al Booger? England versus Scotland in the fight of the day today. Alex Arthur of England versus Michael Gomez of Scotland. His name was actually Michael Armstrong, but he changed it when he turned pro to honor his hero, Puerto Rican Wilfredo Gomez, and they called him the Manchester Mexican. And happy Thanksgiving, Al Booger. Appreciate you. Hope you and your family having a great time today, celebrating Thanksgiving. Okay? And once the bell rang, Gomez fulfilled the spirit of that ominous pledge as he came forward in a semi-crouch and barely 20 seconds into the fight, landed a heavy left hook, followed by what looked like a harmless right hand. But it must have touched the spot because Arthur's legs buckled as his boisterous fans were shocked into silence. The Predator was now full of confidence, slipping and dodging Arthur's forays with ease, while using angles and shifts to cut off the more elusive fighter's escapes. Michael Gomez was in control. The Scotsman looked to his corner for help as the first round ended, with the man from Manchester landing left hooks at will. But the second round saw a restored Arthur smiling and composed, seemingly unconcerned with the battle-hardened warrior who just gave him hell. It was that confidence, mixed with brilliant boxing, that won Arthur the Lonsdale belt, and it was with such moxie and talent that he gained the upper hand in round two. Now Edinburgh rallied behind their star in the making, the crowd roaring and chanting at a deafening pitch, displaying a keen sense of ring presence. Arthur was boxing beautifully off the back foot and avoiding the relentless pressure of the elder Gomez. By the middle of round three, Gomez was cut. And seemed to have lost every bit of momentum he'd won in the opening round, until Arthur made an abrupt decision that baffled everyone and decided the outcome. For reasons unknown, the Scotsman, like a hunted lion who wearies of the chase and decides to turn and fight, suddenly came forward and went toe-to-toe with the British invader. The crowd shrieked as both men landed heavy blows, but it was Gomez sneaking thudding left hooks behind Arthur's guard and staggering his opponent repeatedly. Blood was now seeping from the Scotsman's face. The din in the stadium so loud that Gomez failed to hear the round ending and landed a heavy right hand after the bell rang. Yep. Didn't hear the bell and landed a heavy right hand after it rang. Gomez did. Okay. No one would have argued a stoppage at this point, which was the punishment young Arthur had absorbed. But his corner, coursing with warrior blood, both literally and figuratively, decided to push on. And in round 4, Arthur, to everyone's surprise, found the strength to fire back with his own heavy blows before Gomez retaliated, landing more flush left hooks and buckling the Scotsman's legs again and again. Surely the fight had to be stopped, but it was not, and it was toe-to-toe mayhem, and somehow Arthur survived to hear the bell once again. Round 5 was his last stand, like an injured William Wallace on that bloody day in Falkirk. He dug in and refused to surrender. He might not have been the better man in this struggle, but the star in the making knew he would live to fight another day. His fellow Scots urged him on as his white trunks became a vivid mash of red, and then out of nowhere, Arthur bent his adversary over with a crippling body shot. For a moment, it appeared Arthur might pull off a miracle as Gomez, his strength waning, retreated before the momentum turned once again, and a series of hard blows from the Englishman culminated with a left hook that put Arthur on the floor. And there it is. Arthur's now on the floor. The end of an amazing battle. Down and on his haunches, the Scotsman looked about and amazingly flashed a smile of glee at the TV camera before quickly pulling himself upright and bouncing from foot to foot, convincing the referee he could continue. Moments later, the brave young warrior was down a second time, but again, he sprang to his feet, the referee once more giving him the benefit of the doubt, before a final salvo of heavy blows to Arthur's visage convinced the third man in the ring that enough was enough. He waved his arms, signaling the end, as once more Arthur crashed to the canvas. Looking back at the violent slugfest that was Arthur versus Gomez, one can't help but wonder how close we came to a tragic outcome. And considering the bloody history of conflict between Scotland and England, how horrible a day it might have been had Alex Arthur been seriously injured. It was testament to his amazing courage and fighting spirit that he just kept getting up and battling back, despite all the punishment that he had absorbed. Okay? And there's Gomez, the winner. Celebrating. Yeah, there's Gomez. But in the end, it was Michael Gomez, the Manchester Mexican, who once again could hold aloft the Lawndale belt after nearly succumbing to the younger Warriors' last stand in the form of a thunderous body blow. Instead, Gomez kept his composure and soared through the determined ambush of the Scotsman, just as King Edward did that tragic and bloody day in Falkirk many centuries ago. This was the greatest contest on these shores since Nigel Benn beat Gerald McClellan in 1995, declared promoter Frank Warren. And no one could argue the point. It only lasted 5 rounds, but the crowd, the atmosphere, the history, and the twists and turns of the thrilling slugfest that ensued mark Arthur versus Gomez as one of the great battles in the history of UK boxing. Here you have it, the fight of the day. And there's your winner, the Manchester Mexican, Michael Gomez. Okay? So now we're going to finish up our corruption week. First thing we're going to talk about is the sanctioning bodies. We're going to get to them today because they're going to be first. They've been on the list every day, but we're going to get to them today. We're going to take a look at the sanctioning bodies first. Okay? But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. How's everybody today? On this Thanksgiving 2025. Okay, we got a few things today. We'll talk about the sanctioning bodies, the Louis Resto, Billy Collins fight. We're going to talk about what happened to Fan Man, James Miller, the one that crashed in on the Evander Holyfield Riddick Bowe second fight. And then we're going to see who benefited the most from Fan Man's interruption. Holyfield or Bowe. We're going to look at all that today, okay? But first, the sanctioning bodies. There they are. WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO. Came in that order, okay? So, how did boxing become so corrupt? So there are several champions at each weight class who many times never fight each other. How did we get to that situation in boxing? Now, the multi-champion fiasco came about as a result of, okay, number one, multiple sanctioning bodies who charge multiple sanctioning fees for multiple champions, okay? Number two, promoters allying themselves with particular sanctioning bodies and only fighting particular opponents in order to have more title fights and make more money than they could with a single champion, okay? All about the money. Mm-hmm. And number three, TV networks allying themselves with particular sanctioning bodies and promoters. Okay? Now, the root of all evil, money, right? And when you get so much money in sports like it has become in boxing, you know what's not far behind? Corruption. Okay? Corruption isn't far behind. Right? Now, promoters can wring far more money out of TV and venues for a championship fight than one simply between two fighters. So as TV expanded, so did the number of champions, right? Now, currently the four major sanctioning bodies for boxing are the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO. Now, the WBA is the oldest. WBC is the most prestigious, with the major difference between the sanctioning bodies being when they were born, who was behind their creation, and where they are headquartered. But they all share one goal: making money, charging the most sanctioning fees for title fights that they possibly can, right? Now, the rise of multiple sanctioning bodies meant multiple titles, right? Multiple sanctioning fees and oodles more money. Now, back as recently as several groups who claimed to sanction championship fights, but there generally was only one champion in each weight division. Now, this began to change with the rise of the WBA and WBC in 1962 and 1963. And the first real sign of dueling champions occurred in 1965 when the WBA withdrew recognition from Muhammad Ali as their champion after he signed for the rematch with Sonny Liston, even though the original fight contract for the first fight called for a rematch if Ali won, right? And sanctioning a second world heavyweight championship fight was in the contract. But for some reason, the WBA refused to sanction the fight. And the alphabet title game was born. That's when it was born, right then. Ali Liston 2. They split. WBA stripped Ali. The WBC kept recognizing Ali. Now, Ali did get the WBA back because the WBA had a little tournament and Ernie Terrell won it. And then Ali beat Ernie Terrell and became undisputed once again. Salute Mike Mazik. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, Mike. Appreciate Mike Mazik, Al Booger, Mike Rim. Let me be a part of their Thanksgiving. Hope they enjoyed the show today. It's the final show of the corruption. But happy Thanksgiving. Okay. Yeah. That's when the alphabet title game was born, 1965. Money is at the heart of all of this mess. Okay. Now, each of the four major sanctioning bodies, again, the WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBF, and the still minor IBO, charge sanctioning fees for their title fights. And they also charge sanctioning fees for their elimination fights. And for anything else they can manage to screw a penny out of fighters for. They are all allied in one form or another with certain promoters and certain television networks. And none of them work well with the other. None of the sanctioning bodies work well with the other, and none of the television networks allied with them work well with the other television networks either. Now, the horde of sanctioning organizations allows the horde of television networks and promoters to con the public and milk everyone out of more money, right? Everyone. Fighters, fans, everybody. Because if you're undisputed with 4 belts, guess what? Every time you fight, defend your title, you got 4 different organizations taking a percentage of your purse, okay? So that's the whole purpose, to milk more money out of everybody, right? You got more champions, then you got more fights you can put on pay-per-view and more money you can charge us fans, right? It all comes down to money. Like I just said, when so much money gets involved in sports, corruption is not very far behind. Corruption is right there, stage right, not exiting, getting ready to enter. Now keep this in mind when someone claims Floyd Mayweather had 20-something championship fights. In fact, Floyd never fought for an undisputed title. He used the alphabet titles to game the public into believing he was a multi-division champion. Now, Floyd was a great fighter, but he once fought a man with no amateur or professional fights. Remember? Conor McGregor. It was 0-0, same record I got. And Floyd never fought for an undisputed title or fought an undisputed champion in his career. Look at his resume, never. But he made a lot of money, as did the WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO, and IBO. And don't forget, the Ring Magazine got their little title too, okay? Don't forget, we can't forget the Ring Magazine. And all these multiple sanctioning bodies leave the fans unsure who is champion of what, right? Leave the fans unsure of who is champion of what, right? Crush the legend in the building. The Morning Man, 6 o'clock a.m. Monday through Friday. Salute Crush. Top tier boxing talk, top shelf. And versatile, not just boxing. Music, politics, all kinds of stuff. Crush the legend. And the Drunk Irishman in the building. Salute. Happy Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Appreciate you stopping by today. Hope y'all and your families having a great day together. Okay? Yeah, the multiple sanctioning bodies, man, it's just all comes down to money and corruption. All this money get involved. Like I said, corruption is not far behind. WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO, and the minor IBO. And like I said, don't forget Ring Magazine. They got their little title too, okay? It used to be there were 8 undisputed champions, right? That was it. 8 divisions, 1 champion in each of them. Now, there are 17 weight classes, right? And most WBA, WBC each have 5 different titles. WBO got 3. And amazingly, the IBF only has 1 right now, I think. They were talking about creating some more, right? Plus the Ring Magazine, okay? Right there, that's a total of over 100 champions at any given time. When you put all the weight classes, 17 weight classes together, a total of over 100 champions at any given point. That's why the fans don't know who the champion of what, right? Then they have super, interim, and regular champions. So then we have potentially between 200 and 300 champions at any given time, compared to 8 in the days of Sugar Ray Robinson. Think about it. Some of these sanctioning bodies have 5 different champions in 17 weight classes. And then you got the supers, the interims, the Blue Continental, West Australia champion, you know, for a potential of between 200 and 300 champions at any given time in the sport of boxing. Like I said, the WBA by itself has 5. Super, regular, champion in recess, interim, and the gold champion. That's just the WBO. WBC has 5. Franchise, world champion, champion. Time. Okay. Yeah, the Drunk Irishman says Floyd claims he beat the most champions or former champions in 23. Tony Pep had the IBO. Madonna only ever had the WBA regular belt. That's what I was saying, Drunk Irishman. And Floyd never fought for an undisputed championship and never fought an undisputed champion. No shade on Floyd, but I'm just stating the facts, you know? And like I said, he fought a man with a record of 0-0 in his career. Same record I got. 0 and freaking 0. Conor McGregor. Man never had a boxing fight in his career. Oh, bear with me. I done lost the chat. I don't know what's going on. Let me go out and refresh it and come back in. Okay. Got to be able to see what y'all talking about. Ain't no show about that. Okay, bear with me. Yeah, we on the sanctioning bodies right now, but we got a big show today on this Thanksgiving. I appreciate everybody letting me in and share it with you. Hope everybody's enjoying it. Miss Cass got it smelling good out there. If I suddenly stop talking and disappear, y'all know what's up. I went and got a plate, but I'm gonna try to wait till 4 o'clock. But all of a sudden I stopped for like 5 minutes. Y'all know the deal. The Cass in there eating. And one of y'all ahead of time. Nah, I'm gonna wait till 4. I think. Okay, let me continue. Let me stop. I'm trying to get this chat back. I don't know what in the world is going on. Gotta be this little chat. Okay, bear with me. Okay. But how's everybody's Thanksgiving going so far? Mine is going well. I did the opposite of yesterday. I was doing my walk yesterday, had too much on, taking off stuff. Today I ain't have enough on and froze. It's cold out there today, man. This time of year can be good or it can be bad. Yeah, I froze, but man, come on, internet. Okay, let's move on. We'll get back to that. Okay. Yeah, Drunk Irishman is exactly right. What he said right there about Floyd. Mm-hmm. And he never fought an undisputed champion. It never was undisputed. Okay. But still a great. Okay. Can't see the chat right now, but okay, I'll do it this way. I can check that way, yeah. Okay, let's continue. So, yeah, all these different belts, like I said, potentially any given time can be between 200 and 300 champions in the sport of boxing. The fans don't know who the champion of what is, okay? Now, each of the 4 university accepted organizations, again, WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO, and the IBO, which is attempting to make it 5 major sanctioning bodies. Now, they each charge sanctioning fees for each of their title fights, and they also charge fees for the elimination fights. And for everything else, they can manage to screw a penny out of the fighters and fans for. And when those fighters say they're not interested in belts, I don't blame them. Because if you're 4 belt undisputed, like I said, you're paying 4 different organizations a percentage of your purse. You know? People trying to get all their money. And nowadays, until 1965, there was basically one champion. And like I said, the WBA, WBC split over Ali's rematch with Sonny Liston. the WBA stripped Ali when there was a rematch clause in the contract. But when he signed to fight the rematch, they still stripped him. That's when the big time corruption really began with the sanctioning body. Because before then it was the mafia, but these sanctioning bodies, they make the mafia look like kindergarten, what they was doing, what they doing now in boxing, you know? And promoters a lot of times nowadays don't let fighters fight the best competition. Ever since Floyd came up with the value of that O, right? No promoter wants to let a money fighter fight anyone who might endanger their value. Look at Earl Spence. The man suffered his first loss in 2003. Haven't been able to get a fight since. It's almost, we like a month away from 2026, right? And the man suffered that one loss in 2023 and haven't got another fight since. It seemed like he'd been trying to get fights. Yeah. And we are a month away from 2026, going into his fourth year, right? And then another example, look at Oscar and Virgil Ortiz. They, everybody was thinking Virgil in boots, but now all of a sudden, Virgil talking about his dream fighter is Earl Spence, right? Virgil is the best thing Oscar got over there. He ain't trying to give up that O, right? That's just how it is nowadays. In the old days, as Sugar Ray Robinson said, you fought the best, sometimes you lost, you learned from it, went back, and won the rematch. As legendary boxing writer and historian Anthony Mason noted, rematches tell the story. Great fighters will lose if they fight other great fighters. Rematches are how you tell the grandmasters from the merely great. Perfect example, the greatest of them all, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali fought, like this man said, rematches tell the story. Muhammad Ali fought 11 rematches in his career. He's 11-0 in rematches. Rematches tell the grandmasters just from pure great fighters. Okay, the rematch. Today, a lot of times fighters don't get that chance. Lose your O and goodbye, right? Earl Spence, again, perfect example. Lose your O, good night. Like Sugar Ray Robinson said, you fought the best, sometimes you lost, you learned from it, went back and won the rematch, okay? Those are the sanctioning bodies and the big problem they bring to the sport, okay? So now let's look at this Luis Resto and Billy Collins Jr. situation. Okay? Luis Resto and Billy Collins Jr. situation. Now, this is good. Still haven't got chat the way I want it. Oh, there we go. Yes, there we go. Okay. There we go. Now, so who came in? Let's see. Yeah, okay. John Iverson was the last comment. Okay, yeah. Billy Collins and Luis Resto and Billy Collins. That was a fight where the guy had the padding taken out of him and Panama Lewis. His trainer removed padding out of the gloves. Plus, they added that plaster of Paris, where the more wet it gets, the harder it gets. And coming into the fight, Resto had almost like 30 fights with 8 knockouts. Collins was thought to be the more powerful fighter, but as the fight went on, Resto was punches were having the most effect because that plaster of Paris was hardening up. The more moist his hand wraps got, right? And yeah, it was bad. Let's talk about that. We've talked about that before, but not as deep as we're going to go into it today. Resto and Collins. Yeah, that's a look at Collins right there. He was the one that suffered all those injuries and stuff. Billy Collins Jr. His trainer was Billy Collins Sr. He was the one that figured out this guy was cheating because he knew something was wrong by the type of injuries on his son's face. So he got in the ring and got over to shake Louis Resto's hands before he could get those gloves and stuff off. And then he realized right away that padding had been messed with. So then he got some officials at ringside to examine him. Not only was the padding missing, his hand wraps was like cement, right? His hand wraps were like cement inside the glove. And the injuries that resulted from the fight in his career, that was his last fight in his career. Yeah. That's Collins right there. Let's talk about that now. Controversy and corruption. The Louis Resto, Billy Collins situation. I was panicking, couldn't see my chat. Okay. Yeah, that's Billy Collins. We're going to talk about both fighters a little bit and then the fight. Yeah, Murphy's Law today. Whatever can go wrong is going wrong. But here we go. Billy Collins Jr., rising star from Tennessee. In 1983, 21-year-old Billy Collins Jr. was considered to be a hot up-and-coming prospect and a potential future star in professional boxing. The Antioch, Tennessee fighter had turned professional in 1981 after running up an amateur record of 101 wins and 9 losses. 16 months later, Collins' pro record was 14 wins and no losses with 11 knockouts. He was the one thought they had a power between the two. Now, boxing was Billy Jr.'s family legacy. His father and manager, Billy Collins Sr., was a well-known fighter himself during the late 50s and early 60s. And he won 38 of 56 pro fights. Collins Sr. fought throughout the United States, Europe, South America, and South Africa. And he faced some of the leading boxers of his day, including Curtis Coates, Virgil Atkins, and Delio Lloyd. With some big names. In addition to his legacy and considerable boxing talent, Billy Collins Jr. was telegenic, standing 5'11" and a half inches tall and weighing around 153 pounds. The baby-faced but fierce-looking Collins projected a gritty, charismatic image on the television screen. Going into the Resto fight, Collins was appearing regularly on ESPN's boxing programs, and his promising career had attracted the support of Bob Arum's top-ranked boxing promotional company. Okay? So he had the Bob father's attention. Collins' marketability was boosted by his exciting, scrapping fighting style, which was that of a stand-up boxer puncher who eschewed defense. In the ring, he pumped his left jab aggressively, always following up with crisp right crosses and snapping left hooks. Collins was adept both at long-range fighting and at slugging it out on the inside. Although he could have won his fights by boxing, using his height and 73.5-inch reach to jab and move, Collins Jr. was most known for his hot-blooded approach to fighting and rarely shied away from trading punches with his opponents. Okay? Now, going into the Resto fight, Collins' most important victory was a 10-round decision over unranked Oklahoman Dennis Horn in January of 1983. Horn was 25-5 at the time. Now, Collins followed that fight up, which was a win, with a first-round knockout over Steve Johnson, and then a 6th-round stoppage over Fernando Fernandez. By June 1983, Collins' management was seeking to deepen his ring experience by exposing him to tougher, more challenging foes. For the still developing Collins, ideal opponents were fighters tough enough and experienced enough to challenge him, but not so strong or hard-hitting as to pose too much of a threat. So he had good management bringing them up carefully, unlike Resto. Now, Louis Resto of the Bronx was known to be a tough, highly seasoned fighter with a light punch. Hence, he was selected as Collins' next stepping stone. Okay? And there's Resto. Louis Resto, the opponent from the Bronx. Now, like Collins, Resto was known for trading punches with his opponents in the ring. Now, lacking the power to be a true knockout artist, the Puerto Rican-born Resto sought to win his fights by forcing his foes into brawls so he could wear them down with endless barrages of blows. Resto was a durable fighter, and he was willing to absorb punishment in order to score with punches of his own. So he was kind of like a catcher, willing to take 2, 3, 4 punches to get one good one of his own in. Okay? Like a Jake LaMotta type fighter. As an amateur, Resto evinced considerable natural boxing talent, and he won 2 prestigious New York Golden Gloves titles. Resto also competed in the 1976 U.S. Olympic trials. Didn't make the team though, but he was at the trials. That was a great team, yeah. When he turned pro in 1977 at the age of 22, Resto had proven that he was a tough and able fighter with potentially big professional future. Potential. He had the potential for that, to be a good pro. However, Resto was not protected as a professional like Collins was. From the very beginning of his career, he was matched against dangerous, more experienced fighters. Resto was even brought overseas to fight as the opponent for foreign boxing stars. In early 1978, with only 7 pro fights under his belt, Resto was thrown in the ring with world-rated contender Bruce Curry. He was stopped in 2 rounds. It is almost unheard of in pro boxing that a 7-fight novice would be matched against an opponent as dangerous as Curry was at that point. Yeah. So he wasn't brought along carefully like Collins was. Things did not get easier for Resto after losing to Curry. In his next fight, Resto traveled to Italy and lost a decision to another world-rated fighter, Argentina's Mario Omar Giletti. Giletti had a record of 53 wins, 8 losses, 5 draws to Resto's 8 fights. Several months later, Resto took a big chance and traveled to Caracas to meet undefeated Venezuelan Luis Primera. Resto lost that fight as well. But he had the grimy Panama Lewis, was training him and had a big say in his fights, and they were not bringing him along carefully. Over the next several years, Resto continued to fight difficult opponents. And sometimes he won. In 1979, he decisioned Pat Hallisey, who was 20-1 going into the fight with Resto. In 1980, he fought a draw with the exceptionally tough and experienced Adolfo Variet. Several months later, Resto lost by a 9th round stoppage to highly touted, up-and-coming prospect Nino Gonzalez, who was 20-1 at the time. Okay? Got tongue twisted on that one. Highly touted. Okay? Yeah, the guy was 20-1. They was just throwing him in there with some of the top fighters in the sport, right? Yeah. And he lost a 10-round decision. After that, to Manuel Jimenez, who was also 20-1 in Puerto Rico. But he rebounded later that year with a 7th-round knockout over the tough Domingo Ayala. In 1983, immediately before fighting Collins, Resto's career took an upward turn when he outpointed Sammy Horn over 12 rounds in Atlantic City, New Jersey. At his peak, Resto was briefly ranked just inside the worldwide top 10. By the time he fought Collins, Resto was unranked, but still regarded as a live opponent for almost anyone in the world at welterweight and junior middleweight. Now, going into the Collins fight in June 1983, Resto had a career professional record of 20 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, 30 fights with 8 knockouts. Okay? One gets the impression that Resto's record would have been much better if he had only been the beneficiary of careful management. Okay, so now the Resto Collins fight. Okay, let's take a look at the Resto Collins fight now. The fight, a torrid brawl and an apparent upset. The Collins and Resto each weighed 156 pounds for their fight, which was an action-packed brawl for every moment of the entire 10 rounds. Rarely did the two fighters clinch. It was one of the best fights of that year. And although Collins took a beating, at no point did he look discouraged, and he always tenaciously returned fire. The fight was fought on nearly even terms for the first 2 rounds, with Collins' superior combination punching winning the first and Resto's harder punching giving him a slight edge in the second round. In the third, however, Resto took control of the fight by jolting Collins repeatedly with hurtful snapping punches from both hands. And he was not known as a knockout fighter. He had 30 fights, 8 knockouts. But that plaster of Paris, nobody knew at the time, it was starting to harden. Because, you know, that gets harder the more moist it gets. And he's starting to sweat inside them gloves. And them hand wraps is starting to develop into cement. So as the fight by the third round, he was landing the more hurtful punches, right? Repeatedly snapping Collins' head back with both hands. For the rest of the fight, the chief difference between the fighters was the rest of those punches could do more damage to Collins than Collins was doing the rest of them. It looked like a simple case of Collins lacking the strength to outpunch his seemingly more powerful opponent. Regardless of how severely he was being punished, however, Collins kept himself in the fight by always fighting back. The damaging impact of Resto's punches on Collins' face became evident early as well. By the end of the second round, Collins had a welt under his right eye. By the end of the third, there was a lump on his left eyebrow. After 4 rounds, Collins had massive swellings and bruises above and below both eyes. Yeah, that plaster Paris and them hand wraps were like cement by this point. What's up, Thomas Hill? Last show of the corruption, controversy and corruption. We talked about the Lewis Resto Billy Collins fight. That's the one where Panama Lewis took padding out of the gloves and put some plaster Paris in there. And the man was looking bad. You know, by the third round, his hand wraps were developing and the cement inside his gloves, right? So, yeah. By the fourth round, Collins had massive swellings and bruises above and below both eyes, right? Constantly in the fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds, Collins was hurt and shaken by Resto's punches. And this is a man with 30 fights and just 8 knockouts, doing all this damage all of a sudden. Never had this show this much power before in 30 fights. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he got all his power. Nobody knew about the padding taking out the gloves and the hand wraps at that time. It appeared the fight might be over in the seventh, as Collins was now bleeding badly from a cut on his left eye, and his punches seemed to have lost all their steam. Still, Collins was game and fought on. Between the seventh and eighth rounds, referee Tony Perez observed Collins' facial injuries, but he took no action. And remember, the worst referees list the other day? Who was on it? Tony Perez was on it. And remember, he had a history of letting fights go too long. And he looked at Collins' face between the seventh and eighth rounds, but took no action. Perez also visited Collins' corner after the eighth round, but again, took no action, even though Collins' facial injuries were getting worse. Resto's dominance continued in the final 3 rounds, although by this time he had fatigued himself, and the brave Collins fought back with such tenacity that the fight went to the final bell. By the end of the fight, both of Collins' eyes were surrounded by huge, red swollen welts. Now, the decision was unanimous in favor of Resto, but it was Collins' astounding courage that won the hearts of the crowd. As Collins left the ring, he was surrounded by throngs of Puerto Rican fans shouting, "Toro, Toro, Toro," as a tribute to his tenacity and staying power. Now, minutes after, Collins Sr., his trainer and father, knew something was wrong. And minutes after the fight, he got over there to Resto's corner before they could take those gloves and hand wraps and stuff off. And he squeezed Resto's gloves like he was congratulating him. And he discovered, like he thought something was wrong, the gloves were deprived of padding, right? So let's look at the aftermath of this then. Okay? And then he got some officials at ringside to examine him. And the hand wraps were like cement under the gloves, right? Yeah, the hand wraps were like cement. So let's look at the aftermath of this thing now. Collins and Resto. Okay. Yeah, there's a shot. That's Collins on the left, how he looked after the fight, right? And his father no, that's not punches doing that, right? That's why he ran over there and shook the man's hand before he could remove the gloves or anything. And he said, "Ain't no padding in there." So then he got the officials' attention at ringside, and they made him take the gloves and stuff off. And like I said, the hand wraps were like cement, because the plaster of Paris hardens the more moist they get. By 12 rounds, they were harder than this desk right here I'm sitting at, right? So then, the aftermath of the Resto versus Collins fight involved Billy Collins Jr. suffering career-ending injuries that led to his permanent ineligibility for boxing and a fatal car accident in 1984. The illegal padding removed from Resto's gloves caused Collins to suffer a torn iris and permanently blurred his vision, right? Ending his boxing career. And the boxing commission ruled Collins permanently ineligible to return to the ring. and Collins died in a car accident in 1984, which an account in Sports Illustrated suggested was intentional. Okay? All this from this cheating between this guy Resto and Panama Lewis. There's Resto again. Okay? Now, Louis Resto was convicted of assault and conspiracy for his part in the cheating scandal. And his cornerman, Carlos Panama Lewis, was also implicated. And they both went to jail for this. Did brief jail sentence. Now, Resto was suspended for a minimum of 1 year, but the commission came back and permanently barred him from the sport after further investigation. And Resto was jailed for 2.5 years. Panama Lewis did a couple of years too. Okay, deserve it. And they were both barred from boxing forever. Could never have any type of participation in boxing again ever. Fighter, trainer, whatever. They couldn't be involved. Now the scandal raised concerns about the integrity of boxing and led to greater scrutiny of the sport's rules and regulations. Okay? So this is very interesting, this next thing I got here. It's why did Muhammad Ali have so much trouble with Kenny Norton? This is very good here. Check this out. I hope Aunt McQueen will listen. I think he'll like this. This is right up Aunt's alley here. T Hills too. Listen to this. By Muhammad Ali and Kid. And those were three fights were controversial because they still debated to this day. I was arguing with a guy a couple weeks ago about this. I thought Norton won all of them, right? So let's check this out. Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali. Okay. The question is, okay. Come on, thing change. Here we go. All right. Come on. There we go. Why couldn't Muhammad Ali beat Ken Norton? Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. Now, why couldn't Muhammad Ali beat Ken Norton? The question is a little inaccurate because Ali actually beat Norton 2 out of their 3 times in their classic trilogy. Now, the way the question was phrased was meant to imply that Norton was robbed in 2 of their 3 fights. Now, some people feel that way, some people don't. Now, the better way to phrase that question would be, why was Ken Norton so tough of a matchup for Muhammad Ali? Okay, that was a better way to phrase it right there. Let's talk about it. Why was Ken Norton so tough of a matchup for Muhammad Ali? Again, glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. Here's why Ken Norton was such a tough matchup for the greatest. Okay, here's why. Now, Ken Norton had a unique boxing style called mongoose. Archie Moore and Terence Crawford also used this style. It gets its name from the animal that evolution best equipped to defeat venomous snakes. The snake lashes out at the mongoose, but has difficulty nailing this creature. The mongoose is one of the few animals that can deal with a snake's speed and outfight it. As a result, in the sport of boxing, mongoose is one of the best styles to deal with fast fighters, okay? Muhammad Ali was about the fastest heavyweight fighter there was. Norton's style was the perfect answer to it, okay? Yeah, Norton's style, that mongoose, was the perfect answer because the mongoose was perfect for fighting fast fighters. Jones. Nick groin. Wow. Okay. So yeah. Now George Foreman makes a good point about the Ali Norton situation. Big George said, no fighter should be labeled unbeatable. There's always a boogeyman out there who is able to pick the lock of invincibility. This is still Big George talking. He said, Muhammad Ali was a better overall fighter than Kenny Norton. But, he had so much endurance, that great left jab, and if he was at his best, that quick right hand. You can't compare them in terms of who was a better fighter. But, with that being said, he couldn't really beat Ken Norton. It was the same with me when I fought Muhammad. I've had other losses in my career, but the one guy who truly beat me was Muhammad Ali. Other fighters survived and won decisions against me, but Muhammad truly beat me. Some fighters just have your number, and Norton had Muhammad's number. There's no question about that. Okay, that was Big George talking. Now let's talk about the styles some more. The third fight, 1976, causes the most controversy. Now, before that fight, Ali and his trainer, the legendary Angelo Dundee, knew very well the difficulty of defeating Norton's mongoose style. They decided that the best strategy for Ali would be for him to switch fighting styles. Norton's weakness was that he lost fights to power punches. Team Ali noted in videos how George Foreman destroyed Norton with raw power. That was the key to beat Norton. This analysis proved correct years later when power punchers like Ernie Shavers and Jerry Cooney, like Big George, destroyed Ken Norton. Since it was so difficult for Ali to outbox Norton, the key was to knock him out with power. So leading into the third fight, Ali specifically trained to build up his punching strength, his power. Now obviously, Ali could never match George Foreman in power, not even close. But if he could just pack more of a wallop into his punch, it might be enough to stop Norton. Okay? Now the strategy made sense. It seemed like a good plan until reality stepped in. Ali's forte was not raw power. He could not overpower Norton. Norton was his match in the strength department. What enabled Ali to knock out 37 opponents in his career was not so much strength as it was velocity. Speed translates in part to power. But since Ali was past his prime, their speed was beginning to diminish. And as stated before, mongoose style counteracts speed in any case. So even if Ali was still at his full speed and everything, that mongoose style Norton had still counteracted it, right? So he was going to have trouble against Norton no matter what. Okay, styles make fights, right? Styles make fights. So this is why Ali was simply unable to knock Norton out or even knock him down. He could hurt Norton, but not so frequently as he wanted. But to be fair to Ali, Norton also was unable to knock Ali down either. All three of the Ali-Norton fights were close fights, with one boxer dominating the other by only a razor edge. Now the first Ali-Norton fight was close, but Norton dominated slightly. He broke Ali's jaw, but even in that case, it was a close enough fight to effect a split decision for Norton. The second Ali Norton fight was close, but Ali dominated slightly. And that's the only one. If Ali actually won one, it would be the second one. And the third fight was truly controversial. This was the closest one of them all, but the only one that was a unanimous decision. There are some who think that Norton won that fight, right? I think it was a draw, okay? The judges could have scored that one a draw. Now, Archie Moore used the same mongoose style against Ali that Ken Norton used, but to no effect at all, right? If you watch the 1962 Ali Moore fight, you'll notice that Archie Moore is holding his hands in that cross arm style and moving exactly like Norton did, right? And it worked good for Norton, but it didn't work good for Archie. But the difference was, look at the age difference between them. Ali was only 20 years old at the time. Archie was in his mid-40s, okay? But when it went up with Ken Norton in that style, Ken Norton was in his prime, right? Looked like when he was fighting Archie Moore, it looked like he was fighting an elderly Norton, okay? Now the dream fight would be in this matchup. 1967 Ali without the layoff against the Norton he fought in the first fight, okay? Now Ali would win that one because he was younger and everything, but it would still be a very tough fight because of that mongoose style Norton had. Yeah, the mongoose style would still present a problem for a younger Ali, but Ali would prevail because he still had his full power, speed, legs, all that. But an older Ali in his 30s just didn't have the reflexes of his former self to get past that Norton mongoose style. He was too much past his prime when he fought Norton the third time especially. But such was the ring savvy skill of Ali that he was still able to keep the fight competitive, even against a younger fighter who had his number. You got to give Ali credit for that, you know. Against a younger fighter that still had his number, he still kept it competitive and very close and got the win, right? So now let's look at the fan. What happened to the fan man after the fight when he jumped in there on Riddick Bowe and Holyfield? What happened to him after that? Let's talk about that. This is interesting. What happened to the fan man after the Riddick Bowe Holyfield fight? Let's talk about what happened in that situation and then what happened afterward to the fan man. Okay. Wow. 324. James Miller. That was his government name. James Miller. There's Fan Man. Good shot of Fan Man right there. Mm-hmm. Excellent shot of Fan Man. This is very interesting here. What happened to the fan man? Okay, let's talk about it. And we're going to look at who it benefited the most, that 21-minute interruption they had. The fan man had a stunt going wrong ruined the heavyweight championship fight. Holyfield versus Bowe. It was a highly anticipated rematch, showcasing a deep rivalry and mutual respect between the fighters. The fan man incident added a new layer to their saga. James Miller, the fan man, staged a risky parachute descent into the boxing ring as a publicity stunt. His actions disrupted the match and sparked concerns about athlete and spectator safety. And we're going to look at exactly why he did it too. You know, he explained why he did it. The Fan Man incident led to legal consequences for Miller, tightened security protocols at sporting events, and left a lasting impact on the history of boxing. It serves as a cautionary tale for live sports security. All right. On a crisp November evening in 1993, the boxing world converged at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas, Nevada, for a fight that promised to be etched in history. Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe were set to clash in a heavyweight championship rematch, a sequel to their epic encounter the previous year. But as fate would have it, the night would be remembered not just for the punches thrown inside the ring, but for an unprecedented incident that unfolded above it. In the 7th round, James Miller, a stuntman, now known as the Fan Man, descended from the sky with a motorized fan strapped to his back, intending a publicity stunt. This intrusion not only disrupted the fight, but also left an indelible, albeit infamous mark on the sport of boxing. The setting, a night of anticipation. A night of anticipation. We're talking about a Fan Man. We're gonna discuss exactly why he did this too. He did explain that. I never knew that before, like yesterday, why he did this. Okay. The setting, a night of anticipation. Okay. There's Bowe and Holyfield. Now, the air in Las Vegas was electric. The rematch between Holyfield and Bowe was more than a fight. It was a collision of titans. Their first fight was heralded as a classic, a gritty display of skill and endurance. So for their rematch, it was inevitable that fans packed the stadium. Millions also tuned in worldwide, all of whom were expecting a showdown for the ages. And boy, were they right. But not just for what happened in the ring. Okay? Holyfield and Bowe's relationship over the years since has been a fascinating blend of fierce rivalry and mutual respect. Emerging from a deeply competitive era of heavyweight boxing, the encounters in the ring were marked by intense battles that tested both their physical limits and strategic acumen. Okay? Despite the ferocity of their clashes, a sense of respect gradually developed between the two warriors. The Fan Man incident in this context added another layer to their saga, showcasing their ability to handle not just the predictable punches of boxing, but also the unforeseeable blows of circumstance. Okay, the unexpected visitor. There's Fan Man again. The unexpected visitor. James Miller, the man behind the stunt. Okay? Enter one James Miller, an adventure-seeking parachuter. Miller planned a stunt he believed would catapult him to fame. Unbeknownst to the crowd and fighters below, Miller launched himself from a distance, aiming to land in the ring. It was a plan filled with risk, one that would have far-reaching consequences. Let's look at some of his previous stunts first now. He had done some other stunts, previous James Miller stunts. In 1994, Miller circled approximately 1,000 feet over the rim of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum on his paraglider during the Denver Broncos, Los Angeles Raiders NFL playoff game. He landed in a park north of the Coliseum where he was arrested for interfering with a sporting event. Also in 1994, he flew low over a Bolton Wandsworth Arsenal 40-round FA Cup football match at Burnden Park in Bolton, England. soccer. They call that football over there, but we're talking about a soccer match now. He flew low over that in England. After serving a 7-day prison sentence for that, Miller was deported by British authorities. Then, in an event witnessed by British police, paragliding before landing on top of Buckingham Palace, right? The fool went over to England and landed on Buckingham Palace. The police watched him coming in. And that wasn't the end of it. Once he landed on top of Buckingham Palace, he then removed his trousers, revealing that he was painted green from the waist down, right? He was arrested without incident, fined 200 pounds, and was again deported. This time, he was banned from ever re-entering the UK for life. Okay? When asked by reporters what his motives were for staging these stunts, Miller never gave clear answers. He claimed that he intentionally landed in the boxing ring to break up the Bowe versus Holyfield fight, claiming he was opposed to violence. Okay, so that's why he said he came to the Holyfield-Bowe fight and did that. He was opposed to violence. In Miller's younger brother's opinion, Miller staged the stunts because his younger brother said he was basically bucking society. He was mocking our rules, making up his own as he went along, kind of just making a mockery of our society and the way it works and what our expectations are. Okay? Now, the descent into chaos. Now, the descent into chaos. There he is, see him over there in the corner. Mills Lane did the fight. There's Bowe Holyfield. That's Bowe with his back. See Holyfield's legs down on the other side. And they all looking like, what in the world is that? Fan man over in the corner. The descent into chaos. The 7th round interruption. Okay? The fool was crazy. That's what it boiled down to. But as the fight progressed into as the fight, I'm talking about flight, I'm thinking about fan man. As the fight progressed into the 7th round, with both fighters exchanging blows and the crowd roaring in excitement, Miller made his ill-fated descent towards the middle of the ring. However, his plan didn't go smoothly. His parachute got caught up in the wind and aided by the motorized fan before veering dramatically off course. He landed on the apron on the top ropes of the ring before plummeting into the crowd, causing immediate chaos and confusion. The fight was halted abruptly as officials and security scrambled to address the bizarre situation. Confusion and disarray in the arena. The arena erupted into a mix of shock, bewilderment, and angered fans and officials alike. Everybody was unsure how to react. The fight was momentarily forgotten as everyone's attention turned to Miller, dangling helplessly, entangled in his parachute. Eventually, after what seemed like the longest moment ever, security personnel rushed to detach him while the crowd processed what had just happened. Okay? The legal and safety implications. The legal and safety implications of it. But he said he did it because he was opposed to violence. Okay? Consequences for James Miller. Miller's stunt was not without consequences. Beyond the immediate disruption, there were serious legal and safety implications. His actions raised concerns over the safety of athletes, officials, and fans. And somebody could have parachuted in there with a gun or a bomb or something, right? Look how easy he got in there and landed right on the apron of the ring. So this raised concerns about the safety of the athletes, officials, and the fans in the audience. The stunt led to legal repercussions for Miller and sparked a conversation about security at sporting events. Legal repercussions. James Miller faced legal consequences for his actions, including charges related to dangerous and disruptive behavior, jail time. Miller was arrested and briefly jailed following the incident. He went to the hospital first because Riddick Bowe's entourage beat him up. Then when he left the hospital, he went to jail briefly. The impact on the event security. Organizers and law enforcement agencies reviewed and tightened security protocols to prevent similar occurrences at future events. Okay. So where is James Miller now? Okay, where's Fan Man now? And there's Fan Man outside of his outfit and all that. That's a shot of Fan Man right there. Okay. There's Fan Man. Where's Fan Man now? This is crazy. Listen to this. Now, Miller, after returning to the United States, he had left the country for some reason. I couldn't find out why. But Miller, after returning to the United States, received death threats for interrupting sporting events. He kept doing it. In 1996, he relocated to Valdez, Alaska, where he lived in a dry cabin. Now, he continued to fly ultra-flight aircraft and paragliders, and also gave lessons. Miller briefly worked for a computer company before opening his own computer business. However, not long after starting his own business, he was diagnosed with coronary artery disease in 2001 and underwent double bypass surgery. There were complications, and Miller developed health issues. He was unable to continue flying, paragliding, and hiking. On September 22nd, 2002, Miller was reported missing after he disappeared earlier that morning while driving into the wilderness. His car was found near the Resurrection Pass Trail in Chugach National Forest on the Kenai Peninsula. This is in Alaska, right? Disappeared that morning. His car was found deep in the wooded area park. A search was launched, but was suspended on October 13th, like almost 2 weeks later. Suspended on October 13th. Well, all later. On March 9th, 2003, a group of hunters bushwhacking through the woods on the peninsula found Miller's decomposing body, right? An autopsy revealed that Miller had hanged himself from a tree, okay? Hanged himself from a tree. Some hunters found his body in the woods in Alaska. Police said they believed Miller had chosen the remote Resurrection Pass Trail and had veered deep off trail in hopes that his body would not have been discovered for years, if ever. At the time of his death, Miller's girlfriend was pregnant with the couple's first child. She gave birth to their son shortly before Miller's body was discovered in March 2003. Although Miller's death was reported in the local press, his suicide did not become widely known outside Alaska until 2003, when ESPN went searching for him so they could film a feature to be shown during the 10th anniversary of his stunt of the Bo Holyfield fight, okay? Now, how did stunt change boxing forever? The boxing community reacted with a mix of astonishment and frustration. This incident was not a mere footnote in a boxing fight. It was a shockwave that rippled through the sport. It raised questions about the sanctity of the sport and the security measures in place to protect its integrity. The Fan Man incident became a case study in live sports security. Because think about it, he could have parachuted in there with a bomb or something, right? It led to heightened measures at events, becoming a cautionary tale and standing as a bizarre chapter in the history of boxing. James Miller sought to etch his name in the annals of fame, which he did, although we doubt he knew that his stunt would become a lesson in the unpredictability and lack of safety in live sports at the time. Okay, man, yeah, wow. So let's now this next question. Holyfield or Bo? Who benefited most from the fan man interruption? Had a 21-minute delay in the fight. Who benefited from that? Bo or Holyfield? Okay. Who benefited the most from the fan man interruption? Bo or Holyfield? Personally, I think Holyfield benefited the most. But which fighter did fan man's interruption benefit? Holyfield or Bo? Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. Which fighter did it benefit? Okay. T.O. says that turkey is fried, roasted, or smoked. Okay, let's see. Now, which fighter benefited from this? Let's talk about this. Now, while the outcome remains a subject of debate, the consensus leans toward Evander Holyfield benefiting more from the 21-minute delay caused by the fan man, right? The break in the action came at a crucial moment when Riddick Bowe appeared to be gaining momentum in the 7th round. Now, Bowe had started to take control of the action, effectively using his jab and controlling the fighting after Holyfield had dominated the last 2 rounds. The interruption broke Bowe's rhythm and momentum. And many observers, including the fight's commentators at the time, felt the long delay allowed Holyfield to recover from back spasms he was experiencing at the time and allowed him to reset his strategy, ultimately giving him a much needed break, okay? And when the 21-minute break ended, wait a minute, yeah, there we go. Okay, now when the 21-minute break ended and the fight resumed, Holyfield performed much better for the rest of the round and then went on to win the fight by a close majority decision, with the extended 7th round proving to be a potential difference maker on the scorecards. Now, this is why I think really benefited Holyfield the most right here. Just right here. Amidst the chaos that occurred during the interruption of the fight, Bowe's pregnant wife fainted at ringside and had to be taken to a local hospital. That had to add a significant personal distraction for Bowe for the remainder of the fight. Like I always said, that would have been it. I would have left. You know, he had to see it because once, I know my pregnant wife at ringside, and once that happened, the fight interrupted. First thing I do when I get to the corner, I'm gonna locate my wife in the audience. And then she getting taken out of there, I'm gonna tell them that's it. They say, well, we passed the 4th round. We're going to have to go to the card. Well, go to them. Call me at the hospital. Let me know who won. I'm out. But Bowe kept fighting, So, hey, I'm not saying he's wrong for doing that, but I'm just saying in that situation, I would have left. That would have been it, But Bowe continued, and I think for that reason right there, with his wife's situation, that right there shows you that Holyfield benefited the most from it, because Bowe had to be clearly distracted for the rest of the fight. And in boxing is a lot mental, and you thinking about your wife being taken out of there to the hospital, she's pregnant. How you concentrating on this fight now? And still had 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th test, still had 5 more rounds to go to with all that on his mind, right? So it definitely benefited Holyfield the most. I don't know how anybody can say it benefited both. That right there gives the benefit squarely to Holyfield when that happened, right? His wife fainted, had to be taken out of there to the hospital, pregnant. Now, the consensus does point to Holyfield as the beneficiary between the two fighters of the unexpected and bizarre interruption, which became one of boxing's most memorable moments. Yeah. What y'all think? Holyfield definitely benefited the most just because of the wife situation. Now, one more thing. Omerta, the Mafia's Grip on Boxing. Mainly about Jake LaMotta and his situation with that Billy. Oh man, I'll tell you his name in a minute. Was it Billy Collins? That was the other guy in the Lewis Resto fight, was Billy Collins. Let's see. Finish this thing off. Okay. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on Thanksgiving. Hope everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to eat in like 15 minutes. It's smelling good in here. Okay, the Mafia's Grip on Boxing. Okay. Jake LaMotta's fight for redemption. It's going to take us out. In 1933, the Mafia bosses in the United States faced a major setback with the end of Prohibition. They needed a new source of revenue, something lucrative and easily manipulated. Professional boxing presented the perfect opportunity. With just 2 fighters in each fight, it was simple to fix the outcome by convincing the fighters to throw the fight and betting heavily on the other side. Or if you couldn't bribe the fighters, bribe the judges, right? In 1947, the legendary boxer Jake LaMotta found himself entangled in one of these Mafia scams, right? Jake found himself entangled in one. He found himself entangled in one of these Mafia scams before his fight against Billy Fox. It was Billy something. Now, Jake agreed to intentionally lose the fight, but instead of receiving money in return, he had a much bigger goal in mind, right? Leading up to the fight, Jake was the clear favorite. He had recently defeated Fritzy Zivik, and even had secured a victory against Sugar Ray Robinson himself in 1943, a few years earlier. With 19 wins in his last 22 fights, including 9 knockouts, Jake LaMotta seemed unstoppable. But just hours, and Jake was getting up into his career, and he was wondering if he ever going to get a title shot, because he had denied the Mafia for years. They had been after him, but finally he said, well, forget it, I want this title shot, so I want to go ahead and play ball with him. But just hours before the fight, the odds suddenly shifted, and Fox became the favorite to win. The odds reached such heights that the bookies stopped accepting bets on Fox, leaving only LaMotta as the available option for wagering. Just 3 hours before the fight, right? They stopped taking bets on Fox. Now, if Jake intended to throw the fight discreetly, he did a poor job of it. Throughout the fight, he appeared off his game and lacked his usual fighting spirit. In the 4th round, he allowed Fox to land several punches, eventually leading to Jake hitting the ropes. Fox continued to dominate the round without much resistance from Jake. Towards the end of the 4th round, the referee decided to stop the fight, declaring Fox the winner by TKO. Now, following Fox's relatively easy win, suspicions arose within the boxing community. Fans noticed that Jake didn't perform like his usual self, lacking his usual drive and effort to win. Because Jake was a brawler, He was right there just coming forward. 3 minutes of every round for 15 rounds. And this time he just laid on the ropes and let the man hit him. So everybody like something is wrong, right? He wasn't himself, lacked his usual drive and effort to win. The New York State Athletic Commission also took note of this unusual behavior. Just a week after the fight, Jake faced suspension from the New York State Athletic Commission. The commission discovered that Jake had concealed a spleen condition and had been explicitly advised by doctors not to fight that night. And during the extensive questioning that followed, Jake remained tight-lipped about the true reason for his loss. It took 13 years for the truth to finally come out. In 1960, Tennessee Senator Estes Kefauver led several hearings to expose the Mafia's influence over professional boxing. Jake LaMotta became the star witness of the proceeding, of those hearings. While on the stand, Jake revealed the truth about his involvement in fixing the 1947 fight with Fox. He testified about working with the Mafia to throw the fight and disclosed his motivation. Surprisingly, instead of receiving money and getting a title shot, Jake had also paid them all $20,000, right? Instead of getting a payment from them. He got a title shot and they had to pay them $20,000, right? For the title shot, besides doing the fight. And his motivation was simple, yet profound. Jake desperately craved a chance at the middleweight title, a title that had eluded him for 5 long years. He saw the mob as his ticket to finally achieving his dream. And he did, and he got the title. Jake's testimony shed light on the dark underbelly of professional boxing and the power the Mafia held over the sport. They had total control. It was a shocking revelation that exposed corruption and manipulation within the ring. Now, while the truth may have taken years to come to light, it served as a turning point in the ongoing battle against organized crime's grip on professional sport. Today, the story of Jake LaMotta serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers of greed and the consequences of succumbing to the temptations of the underworld. It serves as a reminder that the pursuit of greatness should always be grounded in integrity and fair play. And at that time, the Mafia had total control, okay? Because remember, Ike Williams wouldn't play ball with him. He wanted him to throw the fight. So they told him, if you don't throw it, he can win 15 rounds of nothing. He's still gonna lose because we got control of the judges. They had a stranglehold on boxing. They couldn't bribe the fighters, then they bribed the judges. And Ike Williams did win that fight, but the judges was under Mafia control and they gave it to his opponent. Right? So yeah, Mafia had a stranglehold on the sport around that time. Yeah, and Jake was scared he was gonna never get a title shot. He'd been a leading contender for like 5 years. And the Mafia had been after him to throw fights, and Jake finally said, I want my title shot, so I'm gonna do it. And it took 13 years. In 1960, he finally came forward. And he didn't suffer any kind of repercussions because Jake lived to be up into his 90s. So the mob didn't get him. Right? Jake LaMotta. I hope everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. Tomorrow is going to be profile day. We're going to look at some cruiserweights tomorrow. Not the Holyfields and them kind of the Usyks. We're going to look at some cruiserweights that kind of like flew under the radar. Some that didn't win titles, wasn't household names, like we did the heavyweights last year. We're going to go on down through the divisions on Friday with that. All the way through the history, cruiserweight. Well, cruiserweights didn't come into being until 1979 or 80, something like that. So yeah, let's go back 40, like a little over 40 years. That's when cruiserweights came into existence. Now, they had a minor sanctioning body started the cruiserweight division in the late 60s, but the WBA and WBC didn't recognize it, that body, so the state's boxing commissions didn't recognize it. But then finally, like the late 70s, the WBA and WBC came on board with it. When they came on board, that's when the state commissions and the media and everybody started recognizing cruiserweight then. 1978, 79, somewhere around in there. Marvin Camel was the first ever cruiserweight champion. Yeah. WBA or WBC, one of them. And then he got the IBF. Well, the IBF, I think, the IBF came in naming people as champions because they was trying to get credibility. And they got credibility before it took the WBO like 16 years before they recognized them. Mm-hmm. The WBO was big in the lower weight class. The boxing always been corrupt. I think it was the IBF president in the late 90s, Robert Lee, president of it. Him and his son and some other IBF officials went to prison because of corruption. The Bob father got on the stand and testified and admitted he had paid the IBF money for favorable ranking for his fights. And the Bob father's still doing that. He was in his 50s then, so he haven't changed. And he was doing it then, he's doing it now, just haven't been caught now, right? Don King stayed silent. Don was paying for rankings too, but Don didn't sing. The Bob father got up there and talked. People went to prison. That's when Daryl Peoples, I think Daryl Peoples, is he still the president of the IBF? No, a lady took over first. She became the first female head of a sanctioning body. And then Daryl Peoples took over after her. Let me see. Is Daryl still the president of the IBF? And the lady was the one to get it back under control and get the credibility back and everything. Yeah. But the guy that went to prison was named Robert Lee. His son went, some other officials high up in the sanctioning body. Yep. They was taking money, doing all kinds of stuff. Money laundering, all kinds of stuff. And got caught. Bob father was one of the star witnesses. That he had to pay for favorable rankings for his fighters. He probably had immunity or something. He didn't go to prison. He helped them convict the other people. Yeah, the Bob father Irvin. The president current of the IBF. I think that's the one that's in the United States, right? IBF? Anyway. IBF. There we go. I don't know if Just Do Boxing is coming on today or not. Yeah, Daryl J. Peoples is still the president. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was founded in 1983. Peoples became the president after that corruption and scandal they had, and he is still president and chief executive officer. The first president after that was a lady. She was the one that got it straightened out. She was the first female head of a sanctioning body. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if Just Du's coming on today, but I'm getting ready to go in here and eat. I found out who that lady was. Who was the first female head of a boxing sanctioning body? Okay. Yep, that's her. The Hiawatha Knight. Mm-hmm. That's her. The International Boxing Federation. 2000. That's around the time Robert Lee and them went to jail. Mm-hmm. And she took over. Yes. All right. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thomas Hill, the Drunk Irishman, Crush the Legend, Mike Massey, Al Booger, Mike Grimm, Miss Cass. Appreciate y'all for stopping by today. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving with your families and everybody. And I'll be back tomorrow with another one. If it's Monday through Friday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, 4th of July, whatever. It's the box at 2 p.m. It's the Boxtorian bringing you all of that boxing history. Appreciate y'all. Happy Thanksgiving.